Right, let's make sure. So happy New Year, everybody. And as always, when there's been a break, just go nice and easily. Let me just adjust the light in a bit. Um, that's better. When there's been a little bit of a break in routine, so we always take a little while to sort of get back into things, both mentally and physically. I think this time last week, I was waking up in the morning wondering what day it was. So we lose that kind of mental acuity that the routines offers. It's not a bad thing to get a break from them, but it does mean just take a little bit more care going back into them. Let's just start in with sitting, finding a posture that is comfortable for you. If you can see, I'm a little bit forwards in my chair, but as always, if my back starts to ache, I will sit back a little bit, slightly angled forwards, just feeling that you're supported, as she said. So one of the things we want to try and sort of remember from sort of doing Tai Chi before, everybody in the class has done this before, but if you happen to be watching on video and you haven't done it before, this is one of the key points, is to try and get away from this idea that we carry subconsciously, that we have to somehow struggle to be upright, to maintain a shape, to maintain a movement. So just try and have a sense for how you're supported. I mean, obviously the ground is supporting you, the chair's supporting you, but if you can be a little bit forwards and tilt forwards, you'll feel that there's also a little bit of support from your legs, not as much obviously as if you're standing. Just letting your hips sink back into your chair. And with this slight angling forwards, unlike in the standing postures, this is the standard posture for seating. So if we're back up like this, we're almost falling backwards. So this gives us a little bit more confidence in hips and feet and the chair to actually give us the support. It also helps us with this feeling at the front of the body, belly, solar plexus, chest and ribs, hanging slightly from your back. So try not to pull your belly in. Get a feeling of just almost as your rib cage dropping down slightly. Just recognize that your back includes your spine, will support the front of your body. And from that feeling of the spine in our back, we can sort of broaden that idea out and get a sense that our skeleton from inside will support our body. So it's taken away some of the reasons, shall we say, for tension to build up. It won't magically disappear, but it helps to have a sense of, if you release the tightness in your shoulders, you're not just going to collapse on the ground or something like that. So then, rubbing your hands together and tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. On the other side. Upper part of the chest. And then down your belly. And finishing with so sit back in your chair. So have your feet out, sit back in the reclining position. And one of the key features, if you like, or key outcomes of the postures that we take is to allow our center of gravity to drop. Lower your center of gravity, the more stable you are. And that may not be particularly significant in the chair, but it's important for when we come to standing, of course. And that also helps us to release some of the tightness in the body. When we do that, we get more space for movement, whether it be things like the movement of our blood circulating, the energy moving, our breathing, and so on and so forth. All the bigger movements that of the exercises. In the colder weather like this, that's always going to be a little bit tighter. So just be aware of that and focus more on that sense of where the spaces are, so that when we start to move, you're able to take this approach that we aim to move to fill those spaces, not to strain against them. So allowing your weight to drop back in the chair, rooting down, and just noticing any characteristics that you begin to recognize, whether it be in your breathing, maybe a sensation in your chest. I always feel when I sit back like this, my shoulders are dropping back, and this kind of broadening of my chest, rather than having to kind of feel that I need to stiffen up somehow in, say, the pectoral muscles or something like that. And that's obviously going to have an impact on my breathing and things as well. So now bringing your feet back in, coming back to this more upright position. And the same thing, trying to get a feeling of gravity working down through your body, drawing your weight down into the chair beneath your hips, into the ground beneath your feet. And as you get that feeling of your hips dropping, and obviously they're not going to go any further unless the chair collapses, which hopefully it doesn't. It doesn't actually mean that they physically have to drop, but a sense of what I would call releasing, letting go or softening. And just to remind ourselves of that, if you hold a hand out and you roll your fingers into a fist, and then do this gently, but just squeeze tightly, and you'll feel the tightness going up through your arm. But then just soften the fingers a little bit, so a little kind of hole appears in the middle of the fist. And that change from the tight grip to the more open grip is the change that you're looking for in areas like, well, through your whole body, but specifically at this point, lower back and belly, hips and buttocks, thighs and knees, to allow this sense of the movement downwards with the pull of gravity. So again, feeling supported, but also as far as your upper body is concerned, less weight to actually have to. And then just slowly and gently turning your head. Be careful not to put any pressure on the side of your neck. So remind yourself this is not a competition to see who can move the furthest, or to see if you can move as far as you could yesterday or 2 weeks ago or whatever. But rather it's a process of just feeling how far you can move without that tightness, without that stiffness coming back into your body. A smooth, fluid quality to the movement. And then hands in front of your shoulders and gently circle your elbows back. So as I start off, I always start off with reasonably small movements, not very small, but moving within my full range of movement, gradually building that up. A bit like if you go to ride a bike, you don't necessarily start off at top speed, or driving your car, especially if you haven't driven it for a while. You go a little bit easy on the accelerator. Give yourself plenty of time. And then going forward, feeling as you do this, not just what's happening in your shoulders, but your chest and your upper back. And then letting your hands drop down and winding around. And again, not just your arms and shoulders, but chest and upper back, beginning to recognize that when we move just one part of the body, in this case our arms, actually other parts of the body are also involved in that. And just using that awareness to develop your awareness, to make it a little bit more sharper, to draw your attention into your body. And just allow anything else to settle into the back seat for a while. Whatever's going on for you today, you've got a busy day, or you had a busy day yesterday, or something like that. Just let those details fade backwards for a little while. And then it's just been winding around. So you're winding upstream, cotton. And then at the other. So we're beginning to become aware of what we might think of as three different aspects to the art. One is obviously to do with the physicality of the process, our posture, mechanics of the movement. Just rest your hands down. Now, tilt forwards a little bit in your pelvis so more of your weight goes into your feet. And as you feel your feet filling up with the weight, you get to a point where a little push downwards just pushes your shoulders back. Don't strain in your back or your shoulders. So yes, the mechanics of the movement, that includes an awareness of the connection from feet to hips to shoulders in the case of this exercise. The awareness of the movement and of the subtle details of what's going on in our body. And not only an awareness of that, but increasingly an intentionality with that. We want to intend these movements as we recognize them. And finally, the movement itself, the flow, the energy. These are the components of the art. They're not separate from each other. But we might choose to focus on one or the other and seek to sort of understand how it connects with the other two. Think of a tripod that you might put a camera on, and each leg has its own sort of structure, its own identity, if you like, but each leg also supports and is supported by the other legs. Turning your hips and waist just a little bit. So now you direct that movement of your weight more towards one leg. Notice how far you can go without straining and tightening. And also recognize that you want to come back up in the same smooth way. Turn, try in the other direction. So when we manage to move and maintain a structure that maintains that space, then the flow of the movement will come through quite naturally. We don't have to create the flow. And then by rolling your pelvis around a little bit, drawing your head and shoulders around in a small circle. Movement should come from the lower part of your body, hips, pelvis, legs, feet, the movement of the weight. But supplemented by these changes of expansion and contraction, our sides, our back, our front. And then go back in. So both the overall structure of our body, weight supported, and the movements come out of the combination of mind, body, and movement one way or another, the different levels of structure within the body. So whilst there's a clear hierarchy, your legs, feet, so on, are always going to have primary importance, they're not left on their own to support it, this sense that one way or another, the whole body supports and moves itself. Coming back, center. And then just pick one foot up, push it forward, plant the foot down front of you. Don't extend your leg to the point where the knee locks. And then on the other side. Come back to this basic posture. So the saying in Tai Chi is that when one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion. And we could broaden that out to include not only about motion, but support as well. So over a period of time, we become more aware of that. And that too becomes part of our intention. And this is one of the things that I think will eventually flow over into our daily lives. A more efficient, a gentler way of actually using our bodies. Now, hands down by your sides. Once again, turn your hands palm forward. Your weight is mostly back in your hips. Easing forwards, rotating your arms. This is bird folds its wings. So again, just note the various components of this movement. Primarily, your weight is moving from a point where it's mostly back in your hips, mostly forwards in your feet. That's connected with the alignment of your pelvis. Here, the pelvis is tilted somewhat forwards. Here, it's more level. That movement will encourage your head to go forwards, and in between, the hips drop back into the chair. And so as your head goes forwards, there's this gentle lengthening through your back and your spine, the muscles, tendons, the ligaments, the fascia extending a little bit. And then as you push down into your feet, all those tissues contract, and that helps to bring you back to the upright position. Same thing going forwards here in the upright position, an extension down through chest to belly, and then a contraction. So all of this is happening before the movement reaches your arms. So then we use our arms, our hands, our shoulders to shape that movement, you create a pattern. So this is bird folds its wings, but this time changing slightly in your arms, doing less in your arms, more. Coming back, your arms swing down, slightly behind your shoulders, go forwards as you settle into your feet. Your arms swing through. Show you from the side. This is fisherman casting in. Now, particularly people more familiar with this exercise, notice two things. One, it's very easy to drift off because you're so familiar with this. It's like, this exercise, and suddenly you're planning your trip to the supermarket or whatever other things that are going on. The second thing is what happens when you bring your attention back and begin to notice changes, particularly in the upper part of the body. The lower body's still doing what it was doing before, weight moving and so on. But for instance, here, as I come back and my arms swing a little bit behind my shoulders, just here, there's an extension. My weight goes forwards, I settle in, and there's a little contraction there that helps to bring my arms around. And there's what sometimes feels like an infinite number of these changes within our body. All of these things that we observe feed into our memory, and our memory, once again, feeds into our intentionality. All these movements are done with a conscious intention. Clearly. And again, this is related to the awareness that we bring to the movements, our sense of being attentive. This time, as you go forward, leaving your arms in position, but still coming back, and that will draw your arms up, expanding through the front of your body. Let your elbow drop down, and draw your fingers around in the center. Rolling the ball into your chest. So try and get away from the idea that you're lifting your arms. To begin with, just be aware of the angle between your arm and the side, and keep it in position. So I'm not lifting my arm, it comes to there, and then my elbow drops. When I do that, I can become more aware of that dynamic of expansion through the front of the body. Like a wave coming up through my arms. So rather than our shoulders having to strain to lift, once again, this feeling that more of your body is engaged in. Do one more of these. This time, as you feel that push up from your feet, turn your hands palm in and let the movement push your elbows out, with your chest expanding a little bit and then contracting. It's this pigeon spreads its wings. Here, chest expands, and then as it contracts, bring your attention to the upper part of your body. Feel what's happening with the shoulder blades. They seem to just slide in and out slightly. And that too is part of the overall dynamic. So rather than focusing on one part of the body, which we may do a little bit at times in Tai Chi, we want to retain a sense of the whole. It's like a bicycle wheel or cart wheel. It has more than one spoke. One spoke on its own would actually be quite weak, but the combination of spokes gives the wheel its strength. One more time. And then leaving your hands in front of your hips, your elbows still go out a little bit. Turn your hands forwards. Chest contracting, drawing your elbows in. And as your elbows come into line with your hips, that pushes the hands forward. And the shape of the arm ensures that your hand just swings up. It's this pushing wave. So that wave-like movement coming up from the ground is now being very, very, very directed, very focused. Try and have an idea of where you're pushing to, or even maybe what you're pushing. This could be pushing against water. You could imagine pushing something like a supermarket trolley or a wheelbarrow. Maybe that when we use these images, detect a change in the movement, because when we use an image, our body will respond to that image one way or another. And when we move against the resistance, like the full supermarket trolley, then the way our body moves is different. We tend to automatically use more body movement. And a very traditional image that's very, very common in Tai Chi, very useful, I think, is to imagine that we're moving through water. Water gives the right kind of resistance and encourages a stronger quality of movement, but not a straining, not a hardening. One more time. And then, letting your hands drop down, rolling into that hollow fist again, coming forward and just rotating. And sit back. So again, noticing the different elements with the intention that they combine into one movement. Your weight moving, your arms rotating, also just extending out a little bit from your shoulder, but in between your hips, your shoulders, all these movements of patterns of expansion and contraction. Now combining these last three movements, this time, open your fingers and just go back into doing one of each. So pigeon spreads its wings, followed by pushing wave, in its turn, followed by punch with both fists. And just enjoying that sense of a flow, one movement to another, one change to another. At the same time, just seeing if there's, notice the change in your upper body as you make the transition from each movement to the next. Let's do one more round. Open your fingers, winding your arms out, and in, and again pressing. Again, expansion in your chest here. Then as that contracts, feel what's happening in your upper back, and whatever else is going on in the sides, your back, your front. Turn your hands palm down. Turning your hips, ease forwards at that movement, push your hands forwards, swing around, and then come back to the center. Settle in to that middle position, and then change direction. This is called polishing the table. as always, there are many subtleties to these exercises, and in particular the seated exercises. And what we want to feel is that our arms are moved from this center part of the body. That's can be quite difficult to notice in chair. Moves and guided through the center of your body. This becomes a very important part of our practice. I stand up, turn my back to you, do this exercise standing, then maybe you can see more clearly how the center of the body works. I turn, I push my hips back, that sends my hands forwards, taking my hips across and let them drop down to come back to the upright position and turn. So what brings me upright here isn't straining in my back and my shoulders, but rather allowing my hips to drop back. Just see if you can get a glimpse of that in these movements. One more round, so one more to each side. Now, as you come back this time, come back very carefully. Feel how, again, that feeling of your hips dropping very subtly helps to draw your head upright. So from the downward movement of gravity, we begin to feel an upward movement. And again, if you can feel this process is working for you when you're seated, then it'll be much clearer when you're standing. So just bringing your hands around as though you're cradling the ball. Let that upward movement push your arms up as though you're lifting the ball and then pressing the ball down again. Bringing that pattern, that rhythm of expansion in your upper body, followed by contraction. You may find that your breathing naturally follows that pattern as well. And if it doesn't, don't try and force your breath. It's a rhythm that runs through the entire body. Expanding movement we could label as yang, down, contracting movement, downward movement as yin. And one of the things that we look for in Tai Chi, one of our sort of intentions, one of our hopes is that rhythm between yin and yang becomes a very harmonious one. Turning your hands palm out, wild goose. So again, through that process of observation, landing on that awareness of rhythm, we start to become aware of the quality of the movement. And this is where the flow, the sense of energy practice begins to make itself felt. Chinese medicine said that the energy will follow thought, the body will follow the energy. And one of the goals, if you like to think like that in Chinese medicine, is again that harmonization of that movement. I think in Tai Chi, which I've already described it as like the three legs of a tripod. It's not quite so linear, the same sort of principle. Now, easing forwards, so your hands can just brush the outside of your knees, coming back in, sinking into your hips, and then pushing up again. This is parting the cloud. Nice, easy, smooth extension. Notice that we're not stretching, not trying to stretch. Obviously, the arms extend out a little bit. but you want to try and feel as though at the end of the movement, at the end of the extension, you could have moved a little bit further. And this helps to maintain that sense of spaciousness. Inevitably, you will find that your range of movement increases. So we could maybe use a term like soft stretching rather than stretching to. One more time. It's time staying upright. Your arms drop down, feeling the weight of your arms, pulling your shoulders down. And then the next expansion is on one side, pushing your arm up, winding your hand around, dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Then changing sides. You may notice the difference between one side of your body and another. One side's a bit stiffer or looser or whatever. This is very common. But remember that basic pattern, that basic rhythm of expansion and contraction actually runs through the whole of your body. So it's not restricted to one side. There may well be factors that prevent that flow happening quite as effectively in some parts of your body compared to others. But try not to get too fixed on any one particular part of your body. We want both a very sort of particularly focused awareness, maybe on that tight shoulder or whatever, but without losing the broader picture, the fullness of the inner landscape of the body. One more on each side. Now bring both hands in until they're just in front of that center part of your body. And there, an expansion, pushing your arms up, and then a contraction, drawing them back down. Bringing your attention back to that central. And then pushing out. And we can begin to feel that this is where the expansion starts and the contraction finishes. Like there's a ball or a balloon there that gets compressed and then expands. Then compressed. When it expands, of course, it's not only going to push upwards and outwards, but also downwards. So it helps to keep that root, that sense of connection to the ground. Not only that, this time, when you push your hands out to the sides, you turn a little bit in that center part of your body. You see how that has a dramatic effect on our arms, back to the center. Turning, expanding, and then finishing off the set with a sideways move. So pushing in 4 directions. Try this one more time. It's very much a horizontal rotation, the center of our body. This time, as you push your arms out sideways, again, extend one leg, just rest the heel on the ground. And this time, rotating vertically, sending your hands forwards, hips sinking back in the chair, drawing your arms up, expanding in the front of you. It's almost like somebody sits behind your chair, just grabs hold of your belt as you go forwards. So you get pulled backwards That draws your shoulders and your head up, and that draws your arms up. Rooted in the feet, transmitted through your legs, directed, guided, shaped through the center part of it. Hands drop down to your side. Once again, making a hollow fist, going forwards, arms slightly behind to begin with, then the chest contracts, drawing your arms over, grasping the tiger's ears. A long, strong feeling in your back, quite a bold quality to the movement at the end. Back, change your feet over, excuse me, starting in the same way, leg extending, scooping the sea, looking at the sky. Just very careful with your back, nothing gained in straining. Letting the natural patterns of movement, the natural structures and elasticity in your body do the work for you. And then grasping the tiger's ears. One more time. And just remind yourself of how this can feel, because although when we come to standing, structurally it's going to be different, the same qualities of spaciousness, movement can potentially be there in your body, in the standing as well. Before we do that, once again, just rubbing your hands together and tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Over one shoulder, and then your arm. To the side. These are quite firm movements, but not hard. Tapping your chest. You can imagine what it would feel like being sort of just pushed by a wave on the beach. It's got that kind of quality. Similarly on your belly. And finally your legs. And then just get circulation going in your legs again, pushing your heels up and down. And then circling. Okay, and then if you want to stand, go into the standing position. It's always interesting to leave the chair there and to use it for support sometimes, so that can help you to, again, a feeling for the subtlety of the movement. I'm going to move it out of the way so that I don't have to keep moving around it while I'm teaching. So in the upright position, when we're standing, the posture is straighter than in the chair. I don't want to lean forwards like this because now gravity's pulling me forwards. I want gravity to flow down through my body, in particular into my hips. So feeling my hips dropping down. Remember that releasing feeling. Again, feeling that there's the potential for support clearly from my legs and my feet. Also for the front of my body, from my back, and for the whole of the body, supported and given shape, if you like, by our skeleton. Again, releasing in your hips this time, let them drop a little bit further, feel your weight dropping down, and then feeling your legs pushing you up again. So again, expanding and contracting, leading you into this very smooth, fluid movement. A combination of our posture and the spaciousness that it offers, of the sense of your whole body engaged in the movement, actually are part of the conditions for the cultivation of this flow of energy. And initially, at least, we just allow that to happen. It's like when you cultivate a plant, you create the environment for that plant to grow in. And then maybe later you shall shape it, you prune it a little bit. So bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball. Standing version of the exercise we did earlier, rooting down, because the principal feature here is the center of gravity dropping. With the expanding, the wave coming up through your body and contracting. People more familiar with this, notice how you can begin to just recall some of the qualities of this and other exercises from your own experience, sense of what you might want to get from these exercises, how you might want to use them, how they can feel, which parts of your body engage with them, and how that happens, and so on and so forth. And these all become intentional qualities. Change into the standing version of the wild goose. Probably find that process of bringing more and more detailed intentionality into the movements is something that works better with certain exercises. We all tend, I think, to have favorite exercises. So, if you don't feel it with every exercise, don't feel that you've somehow failed. The fact that you can begin to bring some of those qualities in some of the time is actually a great step forwards. And we'll actually encourage that in all of the exercises. Heart in the clouds. But remember, we're not forcing the body to do anything. We're not trying to overcome the body. This is not mind over matter. This is what happens when, again, these three elements, these three treasures of body, mind, and energy interact harmoniously. One more time. Good. Now, change the stance. Turn one foot out, have your other foot forwards, keep the width of your step. And now, just going back to the weight transfer that we did in the chair, from hips to feet, now from foot to foot. Very much, particularly in the standing, moving from the ground. So this helps you to maintain the posture so we don't lean forwards or strain in the upper part of the body. So we're able to begin to move, keeping these structural qualities, keeping that sense of the root, and maintaining that environment within which the movement will begin to flow. As you go back this time, raise your front toes. You can turn the front foot out a little bit. When you come forwards, push your back knee in so your heel comes up. And you'll start to find that your body comes more into line with the leg that you're resting on and allowing your weight to flow down through. And then eventually you can build this to a point where you just bring your foot in, push out, ball of the foot down, lower the heel, and then give yourself a moment to settle into each leg. So when we're in line with the pull of gravity, when our body's in line with itself, including your leg and your foot, and you can allow your center of gravity to drop and root down, that's when we feel stable. Try not to think of having to balance. And then on the other side. So first of all, moving your weight. Remember that these little subtle changes can have a profound effect on the body, and they're often things that are almost the opposite of how we've been encouraged to move and stand in the past. So go nice and easily. Don't forget that there is always a degree of physical conditioning that has to take place in our body, and don't overdo that. Give yourself time. And again, especially after a break, you know, where maybe haven't exercised so much. If you need to rest, sit down again. That's fine. This is not, as I said before, not a competition. Just raising your toes and your heel. Be a little bit patient with yourself. We're not robots, we're not machines who operate at the same level each time. There's all sorts of aspects to our lives. You may, if you're feeling a bit tired, or maybe, you know, maybe busy yesterday, if you're feeling tired today, or whatever. It's unreasonable to expect yourself to be able to do everything to a kind of peak performance. Remember, even professional athletes, Olympians, they plan their entire life around peaking at particular points. Nobody can sustain a high level of activity or perfect activity the whole time. And one of the things we learn to do in Tai Chi is to recognize what is going on in our bodies at this particular moment. And then this time, bring your foot in, step through either forwards or backwards, depending on where you have room. And then go back. Have your left foot forwards. And once again, starting in your back foot, push forwards and push your arms out. Like the wild goose, but just turn a little bit. And then come back, let your hands drop down, and as you settle into your back foot, turn a little bit. This time, raise your back heel, step in, well, either direction, depends where you have the room, but I'm going to step forwards, go forwards, settle into your front foot, turn, step through. This is called Dragonfly Skims the Water. And if you're comfortable with this, oops, like I wasn't then, if you're comfortable with this, you bring the foot in, you might want to try and just raise your foot. If you find that you get very wobbly doing that, just leave your toes down to begin with. Remember, we want to align ourselves to root down. That can be very tricky when we're doing a movement like this. I'm going to change direction now, otherwise I'm going to bump into the camera. Take your time. You might find it easier, you might find it better just to say do this. Put your toes down there, that's fine. That can give you a chance to just have a sense of your posture, what's going on in your body at that particular point in time. You might find that that makes it easier to just raise the leg. And then once again, change direction. Dragonfly skims the water. One more time, going forwards. And then going back. And then bring them. So go back to your chair. So that last exercise, and again, for anybody watching who've never done it before, it's quite a tricky one, of course. Quite challenging to maintain all these principles that we began to look at in a complicated exercise, a challenging exercise like that. So don't be surprised if there were a few wobbles. But now, just coming back to this basic stance, let your arms drop down. Final exercise, embrace tiger, return to mountain. There's an expansion, but then the emphasis on the contraction. Your arms coming to hold a ball, elbows dropping, drawing your hands in, and everything seeming to just settle down in your body and mind. Weight dropping, sense of the energy just quietening, your thoughts coming in to your body, into your center, perhaps even down into the ground. So again, just returning to this quality of spaciousness, calmness, of stillness, but in body, mind, and energy. Grace tiger, return to the mountain. One more time. Your hands come to rest on your legs. Close your eyes if it helps. Just sit quietly with this feeling, quietness and stillness. Lovely. Open your eyes slowly or just stay and rest for a little bit longer. Entirely your choice. But thank you very much for watching, everybody. And as always, if you have any questions at any point, do feel free to get in touch with me. Bye for now.
Thank you.